We're going to spend an hour together today talking about some of the opportunities and configuration options that you have within your tiered service configuration. Where we're really going to start today is start talking about the General Configuration 2 menu, MNCNFD, and then we're going to basically spend our time within option number 1. We're going to talk about some of the configuration options that you have within tiered services and some other opportunities that you may have as well. As you see when you come into the tiered service level configuration, there's actually many parts to the actual tiered service configuration. There is to define your point ranges, how I'm going to assign points, how I want this to be displayed to the member, etc. One thing I also want to mention before we kind of get into some of the configurations is that within the control panel, you guys should have a control panel with the GoToMeeting information. If you have any questions throughout this session, we have placed everyone on mute to prevent any background noise. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and submit those. And when you submit those, make sure to submit those to the either the all entire audience or organizers only, so that way we can get the question. And we'll pause periodically so that way you can we can answer the questions. So glad to be with you guys today. Now that we're in this menu option, obviously you can see there's a couple different options when we get in here. Really, when you think about tiered services, you want to think about a way to create positive reinforcement within your membership and rewarding members for certain pieces of activity in hopes that that particular desirable behavior will be repeated in the future, and that they'll be your own marketing campaign and that they'll market to their family and friends to help understand that they're being rewarded at their financial institution for some of the desirable behavior that they have with their credit union. So the CU-based Tiered Service Relationship Management Program really helps you to analyze the member behavior on a monthly basis and also set up a scoring system. So really what we're doing is on the first of every month, during beginning of day processing, we are scoring members based on the activity and configurations that we're going to go through today, based on the previous month's worth of activity. And they will then receive points based on the configurations that we'll cover today. Really the hardest part when you start thinking about, or at least I think it's the hardest part, when you start thinking about tiered services, is how you want to market this to your members. And that's the first configuration that we're going to look at today. If you come into the configure tiered service levels option, you have up to 4 different levels that you can utilize within tiered services. I've seen everything from bronze, silver, gold, and platinum to first mate, captain, whatever mentality or marketing position you really want your credit union to have. So really defining the description and how you want to market that to your members may be one of the most difficult things to creatively come up with. Now, many of you who are looking to start a tiered services program may already have something in mind. That's great. We can run with it and start working on some configurations together. The point ranges are something that we can drill down a little bit later. Point ranges we may start and think about how we want to assign points, whether it be on a 100 scale basis, maybe a 10 scale basis, etc. Typically, we see most credit unions who stick to the 100 scale basis or higher, which allows members to have a little bit more weight when it comes to the points. So if I say as a cross-sales opportunity, if I were to say to a member that they're going to receive 10 points in addition to all their other points for enrolling in e-statements, for example, that may not have as much weight as, hey, if you enroll for e-statements, you will be getting 100 points. So there's a little difference in the jargon and how you're actually selling that to the member, if you will. The one thing I do want to suggest is when you start looking at point ranges and we work through some forecasting options, you always want your from to be a whole value. What that constitutes or what that creates is a situation where you can cross-sell and market to members to say, if you have 200 points or more, you would be in at least this category and would receive X benefits, for example. So keeping it at that whole point level really creates a situation where it's easier for you and your staff to review that information and know that when they're communicating with members, they can actually move forward with saying that at 200 points you would reach this level. At 300 you would reach this level, so on and so forth. The next portion of tiered services is where we actually dive into the actual point configuration when it comes to what points we will be assigning members when we are promoting or running the program on the first of every month. The second piece of the puzzle that you may need to work with your internal management team, as well as maybe even your board of directors, is to think about what your overall goals are for relationship pricing and tiered services. Is your main goal to encourage members to use the credit union as their primary financial institution? Are you encouraging members to analyze their own savings plan? Are you encouraging members to analyze their own borrowing habits? Maybe encouraging member-elected outside services like ATM debit cards, credit cards, maybe deposit services, or maybe there's some other combination of all the different goals that I had just mentioned that you would be looking to promote. Recently, most credit unions have really drilled down on the lending portion of tiered services, so they would actually score or give more points for the lending portion of the points that can be assigned, so that way they're promoting that behavior within their membership. In many cases, you could assign a number of points for a certain aggregate balance of loans, so that way you can ensure that the higher loan balance they have with your credit union, the more points that they would receive on a monthly basis. When we first look at this first screen, we have our goal number 1 section. What this is telling me is that we have special accounts with dividend application equal to whatever our variable may be. This is typically used to define a primary financial institution relationship. So you can come in here and actually select 1 or 2 different share products that would allude to the fact that this particular member is using your credit union as their primary financial institution. Now, most credit unions will probably use their checking account to say that, hey, this is the one product or one share product we have that would truly recognize that this member is using us as their primary financial institution. Now, this may not necessarily always be the case, so you want to kind of tread this lightly, because I, for example, happen to have 3 checking accounts at 3 different credit unions. So what does that really mean? Obviously, this is something that you can discuss internally with your team and discuss with your board members to see what they think would be a share product or a combination of share products that would allude to the fact that the member would receive or would regard your credit union as their primary financial institution. You'll see that we can award this a certain number of points. They will get the number of points that are listed for whatever options that you have within the variable section. So if I had selected checking, they would receive 10 points for that particular product, etc. The next section is all about loyalty and how long that they have actually been a member within the credit union. So this particular credit union that we're looking at happens to have 10 points that are awarded for every year of membership after 5 years. So what this is telling us is that after being vested within the credit union for 5 years, you would then get 10 points for each of those years. So if there was a member who was a member for 20 years, they would get 10 points for the 20 years, for example. If they happen to be a member who's been a member for 4 years, they would not get any points until they've actually been vested for 5 years. So it does kind of go retroactive once they do go above and beyond the 5 years that they need to be vested to move forward. Down towards the bottom of the screen is where we start getting into savings relationships and how we would like to award points accordingly when it comes to that. The first screen is additional general savings products configured. This happens to be any other share products or savings products that the member may have outside of what we've specified in the top section. So this particular option will actually scan all savings accounts, excluding the 000 membership account and excluding the IRA accounts, and they will happen to get a score for each account that they have. So if a credit union has 3 sub-share account types and perhaps a Christmas club, if a member were to have 2 of those sub-share accounts as well as a Christmas club, they would actually get 3 times whatever the number of points that are listed here. The next option, non-IRA certificate products present. In this particular option, it's a little bit different from the previous option in that we would scan the certificate file for any certificate that the member has that is not an IRA. This is simply just looking for the presence. So this is really designed so that the member with 5 $1,000 certificates, for example, does not score more points than a member with a $100,000 certificate balance. You can kind of score a little bit differently in regards to aggregate balances when we start talking about the aggregate balances here in a moment. The next option, IRA share and certificate products present. This would be understanding whether or not that there is any sort of IRA product that is out there. This is by plan type. So if a member happened to have a traditional IRA shares account and a Roth IRA certificate, they would receive points for the presence of the traditional as well as points for the presence of the Roth. So this is a way to reward members based on any sort of retirement package or planning that they may be doing through an IRA with your credit union. Some credit unions may consider this a fairly sticky product, quote unquote, if you will, because not a lot of people like moving IRAs between financial institutions with all the reporting, withholding, etc. So some credit unions may award this a little bit higher than other categories within this savings section because of that stickiness that it really truly boils down to. And then obviously that stickiness would account to or end up rewarding the member with further points. The next section, money market accounts. Even though it's called money market accounts, it doesn't necessarily have to be a money market account, but you do have the ability to specify a specific account type which you want to award bonus points for. So if you happen to have a money market account, sure, this would be great to utilize for your money market account. But maybe you have a qualified dividend checking product, for example, that you'd want to reward them for. You could choose that particular option, and then we would reward the appropriate points based on that. Any checking account with a negative balance. This is an interesting option when you start thinking about courtesy pay or automated non-returns, negative balance limits, etc. So you don't necessarily want to take away points if you guys are having a courtesy pay program that you're gaining or making fee income off of, because you're also coaching that behavior. So if you're taking away points for something that you're coaching for behavior-wise, you just want to make sure that your goals are kind of in the right place. So if it is something that you do happen to be promoting within your membership, for them to allow to be negative and assess those fees. I've seen a lot of credit unions who may leave this as 0, for example, as opposed to taking away points. The savings product with a negative balance would be anything else outside of the checking account that would be negative for whatever reason. This may involve a situation where something has been force posted to a savings account for whatever reason. Maybe there was recently a checking account that was closed and you force posted it to the savings account, whatever it may be. I do typically see credit unions who will take away a number of points given that they have a negative balance in the share account. Completely up to you guys to determine how you'd like this to be configured, but it is something that we see in the marketplace today. Next, we get into the aggregate balance section. This is aggregate balance that is listed here, is going to be looking across 4 different files within CU Base. So it's going to look in member 1 through member 4 files, which is where we store all the share information. So it's going to be all share accounts, sub-share accounts, certificates, checking accounts, and also escrow accounts, if you guys happen to have escrow accounts with your credit union. Aggregate balances within savings accounts. This will take the entire total, and the member will score once based on where the total balance lies at the end of the month. So I've seen a lot of credit unions get a little bit creative here, and maybe in this top section, they may say that $0 up to $100 in aggregate balance really isn't a lot, and this may allude to a member who is primarily cashing checks within the credit union and may not be utilizing any of the other products and services. So I may say I want to award 0 points for everything up to $100, and then my other aggregate balances would go up accordingly as I move forward. My aggregate balance would then adjust from $100 as opposed to $1,000 here to $10,000, so on and so forth. So I may, for example, change this to 100 points, change this to 200 points, 300 points, 400 points, etc. So this is a great opportunity to reward your members who have a high aggregate balance in savings products with the credit union. Now, depending on your end goal or your ultimate goal in analyzing your membership and rewarding your membership accordingly, an aggregate balance in a savings product, we're going to have the same aggregate balance screens when we look at the actual lending screen, which is one of the next screens that we're going to look at. So you want to think about, if I'm setting this to 100, 200, 300, and 400, how do I want to set up my loan accounts? Do I want to double it for loan accounts, for example, to truly promote that behavior? Or do I want to add it as being the same as my savings accounts and having a $1,000 balance in savings is almost equal to having $1,000 in a lending balance? Ultimately, the decision is up to you and your team, but just throwing out some options for you to recognize and review internally. The miscellaneous OTB, or off-trial balance savings accounts present. This will be a situation where maybe you have an off-trial balance relationship that is established through CU Base. It may be a retirement account somewhere else or anything along those lines, but that's typically something that would require some custom programming and also the upload of a file. But the miscellaneous OTB savings account present, if that happens to be a product that you're really promoting internally within the credit union, but just doesn't happen to be on your balance sheet, you can offer points for that particular option. As you can see, after I hit enter on my keyboard, it adjusted my aggregate balance ranges, and then I can hit enter again to move forward. Just a reminder, if you have any questions on any of the fields or any of the information that we're covering, don't hesitate to throw them out into the chat feature, and then we'll take a look at those as we move forward and pause occasionally, etc. The next screen, which a lot of credit unions get interested into, is analyzing the member loan relationships. The first option is, it says mortgage loans, and even the second option talks about home equity loans. But again, very similar to the other products that we saw on the previous screen, or the other line items in regards to money market accounts, you can really select any of the products that are here. So you can use the item to score any kind of special loan, quote unquote, by entering in the loan category for that particular product. We're suggesting mortgage loans because of the general importance that may be applied to your lending portfolio. So if you happen to have a mortgage account, for example, or a number of mortgage loan categories, you may want to select that option here and promote that within your membership. So you may say that you may receive 100 points for having this particular type of loan, and then this can be utilized later on for your point relationship, getting fee waivers, etc. Now, the existence of this loan will, even if it is at a zero balance, the member has the product, so they will get the number of points that are listed there. And they will score for each account that is held. So if I have a loan category in here of a student loan, for example, and this particular membership were to have 3 student loans, they would get the points that you have listed times 3, for example. The next section, we do the same thing with home equities because we consider home equities as being an important aspect of your lending portfolio. I may come in and select all of my home equity type accounts, and you can use the control key on your keyboard to select the different options that are in here. So that way you can ensure that you get all the options for the home equity. And you may say that I want to award 150 points per loan category that's there. Again, we're isolating what we consider maybe a sticky, quote-unquote, product that you can then utilize to award further points for. All other loans would be any other section or any other loan that the member may have outside of what was specified in the mortgage or home equity section. Again, in this particular option, loan accounts are scored even if the balance is 0. The reward is based on the member having the product. So if the member does have an aggregate balance that you want to award a little bit higher, you would use that in the aggregate balance section below. Moving on, any loan product with a delinquency level of X, for example. Delinquency levels are configured through a separate menu option in CU-Base. Typically, delinquency level 1 may be 0 to 30 days. Delinquency level 2 may be 1 month to 3 months, something along those lines. So you definitely want to reference your delinquency configuration prior to analyzing this section. Most credit unions will take away 50 to 100 points, if not more than that, if they happen to have a delinquent loan at level 2 is typically what I see. So that would typically be 1 month and more delinquent. The member would see a deduction in the number of points. You also want to tread carefully with this because what it'll do is at the end of the month, if I'm 1 month delinquent and then I come in on the 1st or 2nd of the month and make my payment, I'm not going to be scored again to get those points back until the next month. So if this were to drop a member into a category where they may not get their usual fee waivers, it may be positive reinforcement for that member to ensure that they're on time with their loan payments. Very similar to the aggregate balance option that we had within the savings account option, you may say that an aggregate balance up to 1,000 may not be something that you want to reward a member so much for. So I may award 25 points for an aggregate balance up to 1,000, but maybe beyond that is where I really want to start awarding the points a little bit differently for my members. So I may say 1,000 to 10,000 may get 150 points. Keep in mind that these aggregate balances are in whole dollars only. So I'm going to say 20,000 to 25,000 or 20,000 to 50,000 would be fine. Now, even I made a mistake back here. Just like I talked about before, you want to make sure that you have whole dollars only, always in the from section. This implies that it makes it easier for your members or your employees to sell to your members what balance they need to get the appropriate levels. I'm going to go ahead and type some options in here. And then this may be indicative of a membership or a credit union where they want to score their members a little bit higher on loans than they do on savings products. So I kind of gave it an increased value or an increased weight in regards to what else is out there in regards to their loan aggregate balances. Miscellaneous OTB or off-trial balance loans present. If you happen to have student loans or anything along those lines that may be kept on a separate balance sheet or not on the balance sheet on CU-Base, if we have an interface with that to CU-Base, we do have the ability to score for that particular option. And then the most common setting, I haven't seen anybody not set points to 0 and do not score for written off loans. So this is definitely something that you probably would want to do. So that way anybody with a written off loan isn't getting any sort of rewards or rate benefits, etc. Moving on. The next section is going to be self-service relationships. I have seen some credit unions in the past who start looking at self-service relationships and really rewarding this, maybe even higher than lending. Really, it's up to you how you want to reward these, but a lot of these particular options within self-service have a direct impact to your bottom line. So e-statements, for example, if this member happens to be enrolled for e-statements at the end of the month, I may award 100 points for that particular option. It simply just looks for anybody who has a e-statement enrollment. If they happen to be unenrolled from e-statements or they were enrolled for e-statements at one time, it does not score them. They have to be enrolled on the date of the scoring. Up towards the top of the screen, we have our ATM activity and our debit card activity. We have the option to score these a little bit differently if you'd like to. I have seen many credit unions who will score a lower number of points for ATM transactions. These would be your PIN-based transactions, then your actual signature-based transactions based on the income that's received between the types of transactions. It simply looks for the type of transaction in the history file, and the member will score once regardless of the number of transactions. So the member may have one transaction throughout the month, or they may be a heavy debit card user, such as 50 transactions a month. They would receive the same number of points. Credit cards. This would be a situation where you can actually award based on the existence of either an online credit card or an off-trial balance credit card on the actual membership. Definitely want to award points for that, as them having a credit card at their disposal. I didn't really allude to it on the last screen when I started talking about aggregate balances of loans. I started that at 1,000, where I really got points heavy. You really want to take the people who are not up into that level, whether it be loans with a zero balance or loans that you've already done the work for, up to whatever balance you determine internally, as well as credit cards that may not have a balance, and market to those individuals occasionally. I think it's a great marketing opportunity to look to your individuals for the loans that you've already done the work for, and they have the disbursement limit at their disposal, and they're just not using it, for example. I've seen a lot of credit unions be successful with that around the holiday time, where they may run a fourth quarter promotion based on loans that they've already worked and are done and completed, and they just market that, hey, it's available to them at their leisure. You could even do some promotions within the online credit card program where you could do some special buckets if you have an online credit card, etc. But definitely think about that and some of the other marketing opportunities that you have available to you as we move forward through this option. Audio response. If a member happens to use CU Talk, you can award a number of points. It simply looks for any use during the month. So again, if they happen to use it once or they use it 500 times throughout the month, they would get the number of points listed there, and it's not multiplied by any factor. Same thing goes for online banking. I do see a lot of credit unions who award more points for online banking than audio response because you do have the ability to market a little bit more in online banking, as well as offer the member more options such as e-statements and anything along those lines. So I definitely see people who are granting more points for online banking than the actual audio response. E-statements we already talked about. Bill payment. If you are using CU EasyPay, what we're going to do is at the time the scoring is completed, we will look to this particular enrollment file, and if the member happens to be enrolled at the time of the scoring, we will award them points. Seen a lot of credit unions get really intensive with the points here because if the member happens to have all of their billers set up within CU EasyPay, it's a lot of work, and it's really a deterrent for the member to go look for another financial institution because they really happen to not have the desire to set up that particular billers again. So it's definitely an option that you want to reward the members for having that particular bill payment or bill presentment enrollment date on file. Now, when we look to the direct deposit option, we have a couple different options here. We have paper payroll, which is the first option. This happens to be payrolls that you would be processing internally at the credit union for maybe a local business or organization. You do have the ability to put in a certain dollar amount, and then the points will be awarded if they meet that particular threshold. Now, keep in mind, this works the same with ACH, that if the member has a distribution, it will count it in addition to the base distribution. For example, if a member receives $500 as a base deposit through payroll and the system distributes a loan payment of $150 and a savings distribution of $125, the member will get a $775 in payroll deposits. So you definitely want to take into consideration the fact that that is the case, and if your membership is really distribution heavy, members may meet that 500 threshold in 1 week's worth of payment. So you definitely want to analyze that and determine what you would want to set your minimums to. The way I like to look at it is whether they're getting paper payroll or ACH payroll, they are also not coming into your lobbies. So you're promoting that sort of behavior by having them get their payments done electronically. You may also, for example, want to take into consideration the individuals or members who may be getting pensions or getting paid once a month. If they're getting paid once a month and you want them to apply into the appropriate tier, you want to at least recognize that those members are part of your membership and think about how you'd like to include them in regards to the number of points and the threshold that you create. Next couple of options, transfers of any type via AFT. This is going to look for any AFT that is listed on the membership. It could be a savings-to-savings AFT. It could be an RMD or a required minimum distribution that you have set up for the individual to transfer from their IRA to maybe their savings or checking account on an annual basis. You also have the ability in the second section to specify if there is a deposit to a loan payment. In both of these options, the member will only score once if any activity is found. But I typically see credit unions who may say 50 points for a normal AFT, but I want to give them a larger number of points for setting up that AFT that is set up to pay an internal loan. So definitely some options in regards to your automatic funds transfers as to how you would like to reward your membership. The next option, analyze promotion club relationships. I'm going to talk about that a little bit here a second. Within the same configuration menu, you do have the ability within the marketing club configuration, if you were to pick any marketing club, for example, and go into the club parameters and administration, you can actually grant tiered service points based on the fact that they are in the marketing club. So you may have a certain chess club or a senior club that would actually award a number of points based on being being a member of that club. You may have a club, like I said, like a chess club, a youth club, that may give a member a certain number of points that would kind of give them at the start of what would be one of your levels that are out there. The next option that we'll look at is the instant benefits. So now that we've actually created our point levels that we have available to the member, we do have the ability to run some forecasting, which I believe we'll talk about in a later class, as well as some management type reports. But these are the instant benefits that would apply to the members at each particular level. So instant benefits are going to be interactive fee waivers that are performed throughout the system based on the level that the member has achieved. These are there aren't any waivers that need to be manually waived. Because of a member's tier level, they would simply automatically not appear as you look and work throughout the system. So check cashing service fee, for example. If you happen to have one configured, a check cashing fee, you can waive to a certain number of members within your membership. Typically only see credit unions waive this for the top 1 or 2 tiers because it is something that they want to discourage. It's important to note that if you don't have any of these fees currently configured to your membership, when you start looking at tiered services and thinking about the implementation of tiered services, it's a great time to look at fees and analyze your fee schedule and assign a fee to a particular service that you may offer or a product that you may offer from the credit union. It's important to do so even if you're waiving 99% of them, to assign a weight or a value to that particular product or service. So check cashing fee, even though it may not, you may waive 99% of them if you choose to do so. Maybe you're going to waive it for everyone in levels A, B, and C, which would be your top 3 levels, and only charge your basic members. It may be something that you'd like to do. So it's completely up to you to analyze your fee schedule, but it's a great time to assign a value and a weight to some of those options. Check printing. These would be your corporate checks that you would print at the credit union for your laser checks. Now keep in mind as we go through some of these fee waivers that we do have normal waivers that are available for configuration within some of the fee configurations, such as age or aggregate savings. So members could be subject to those waivers as well. Money order printing, same thing as the corporate checks. If they happen to do a money order through the teller processing system, the fee would be assessed or not assessed based on what's here. Transaction history fee, this will be the history fee that you print from phone operator. This is by suffix, so when you highlight a particular suffix in phone operator and choose the list option, this is the fee that would be waived or not waived based on the member's tier level. Marketing clubs is the next option under miscellaneous member services for our instant benefits. You have the ability based on each individual tier level to also assign a marketing club. How that can be beneficial is that you may say that my top tier, if it were to be platinum, I want to enroll them in the platinum marketing club. That particular marketing club may be a marketing club that offers rate benefits, for example. So if anybody is at the platinum tier level for a month, and they're also, when we do our scoring at the beginning of the month, it'll also enroll them in the platinum marketing club, and they may start accruing either a loan rate benefit, a certificate rate benefit, or maybe even a share rate benefit based on what you determine. A lot of credit unions may do this for the top tier only, or they may do it in a tiered sort of fashion where your level A may get 5 basis point bump on everything. Your level B would get a 10% or a 10 basis point bump, and then your level C would get a 15 basis point bump. So depending on your strategy and how you'd like to look at that, we can definitely take a look at it. But typically when we start the tiered service rollout to your membership, we typically like to see about 60% in the basic, 20% in level A, and then go on up from there with roughly 5% in the top tier. If you have safe deposit boxes, you can charge a specific fee or a fee level to the members in question in that particular tier. So that way they would maybe get a bonus for being at a certain level at the time the fee is posted. If you don't have safe deposit boxes, you don't necessarily have to configure those. Certificate renewal bonus. This is an item that is used to boost the renewal incentive anytime a certificate is renewed. So if a certificate is configured for auto renewal, the system will look at this amount plus any other bonus amounts if the member happens to be in a marketing club, and it will add the higher amount to the certificate account when the total percentage is calculated as the new certificate rolls. Wouldn't necessarily see this like we have in our test credit union for all levels, but maybe your top level you want to give a certain bump, so that way you can market that, hey, if you're at our platinum tier, you would get a certain renewal bonus on any certificates that you have with the credit union. Another way to keep the member involved and keep them in tune with what may be a sticky product. A couple other incentives that we have on this particular screen. These are some interesting options because we can start thinking about service charge groups, for example. So I may, for example, reward my members and add a service charge group for each individual level. So my level 1 or my basic members may be ATM service charge group 01, may go to 02, 03, and 04. This may allude to the fact that maybe my basic members are only allowed to have 10 transactions free a month. Your level A could get 15, level B 20, level C unlimited, for example. So you definitely have some options that are available there for you. It would take some configurations in regards to the actual ATM service charge configuration code, but we can definitely help you with those as well. OTB balance transfer service charge. I'm not aware of any credit unions who are charging this. If you do happen to have an OTB product where you charge a fee, you do have the ability to waive that or not. Bill payment presentment service charge code. Very similar to the ATM service charge code. We can set up bill payment or CU Easy Pay service charge codes for each level and tier it accordingly. So you may say that the fee for a basic member is $6, $5 for level A, $4 for level B, $3 for level C. So you definitely have some options to tier some of these fees, and depending on where the member falls in the appropriate month, they would receive the respective fee. Electronic deposit hold group, again, very similar, where we would go to a separate menu option to configure our electronic deposit hold groups. We may grant our basic members only $100 if they make a deposit at an ATM. Failed to mention that when I start talking about electronic deposit holds, these are your ATM deposits. If your members have the capability to do that, what type of hold would come into consideration? Your platinum tier members, you may say that I want to give them no hold whatsoever, and then all of it would be available to them. You would have the ability to do that. Another great way to market to what we would expect would be that 60% in the basic level. If they can get their relationship up to that particular point, you may do that. Now, again, it's completely up to you guys. I'm just promoting some examples that I've seen in other credit unions. The next three options, overdraft transfer fees. We have the first option for overdraft transfer fee from shares. Then we have the overdraft transfer fee from line of credit. And then we have the combined option, which is where they would take from the shares and line of credit for one particular transaction. Haven't seen a whole lot of credit unions that are waiving this particular fee, but it is something that you can do for a certain number of options or a certain number of tier levels that are out there. E-statement fees, I don't see anybody charging for e-statements, so that's definitely something that I don't see configured, but something I have seen in some other credit unions, if you're not currently doing it, is that you can actually award a credit to members for being enrolled in e-statements. That would be something outside of tiered services, but I did just want to mention it. One of the local credit unions that I've been working with actually offers a 25-cent credit to members on a monthly basis if they're enrolled in e-statements. So it's a neat way to collaborate with your members in the cost savings in the actual printing and postage and preparing of a statement and sharing that with the member. The next two options, A to A, if you happen to use the account-to-account transfer feature of CU Base, whether the member generates it in online banking or generates it through the credit union, you have the ability to either waive an incoming or outgoing fee if it does happen to be configured. So this is definitely something that you can award your platinum tier as well as thinking about how maybe you want to roll out A to A to your members if you're not currently using it. I know I did an analysis of many credit unions last year that weren't using A to A processing through CU Base. but when you look historically at their transactions, you can definitely tell that they were doing A to A and were more than likely doing it through another financial institution. So if your members aren't currently doing A to A, you may want to review a little bit further and think about how you could offer it at your credit union and understand how that could be their primary financial institution. One of the last fees that we have here is the printed statement style fee. This was something that we released fairly recently, I believe it was last year, where you can actually configure up to, I believe it's 6 or 7 different printed statement styles with a certain fee associated with it. So you may have a large text statement that's available, maybe a different style of a statement with 2 bars or 2 rows or columns versus the standard statement style. This is something that you could waive for a certain level, but if it isn't something that you've visited yet, definitely think about looking at special printed statement styles and how they can have an effect on your bottom line for statement processing and printing. That is configured through a separate menu option and can be completely done outside of tiered services if that's something you're interested in. Go ahead on to the next screen. This would be for CU Talk Minutes or It's Me 247. Haven't seen many credit unions charge for either of those services. You do have the ability to charge for those services, and then you can award a certain number of logons free, etc., or you can just leave it all blank. And those are all the instant benefits that we have for our tiered service rewards based on the levels that are configured. Now that we've covered those 2 options, next couple of classes throughout the month, we'll start talking about some of the marketing opportunities as well as some of the other options that we have in regards to forecasting once we get this information set up. The other thing that I did want to mention real quick before we part ways for the day is the actual reward points program. As a piece of tiered services within CU Base, or you could do it separately later on, you do have the ability to configure what we call reward points, which actually used to be called lifetime points. So reward points are a way to accumulate tiered service points on a monthly basis so that they can be redeemed later on. This has been wildly successful at some credit unions where they configure a catalog, for example. This catalog may be anything from credit union mugs, credit union polo shirts, etc. It could also be things that are internal to the credit union, such as waiving an NSF fee or getting a bump on a particular certificate rate in addition to all your other bumps by redeeming a certain number of points. So this is a catalog of items that you can define and award to members on whatever basis they deem necessary. Points can be redeemed right through any of the teller line functions or phone operator functions, so it's really easy to do. And then obviously they would just have to give the product or service to the member manually as needed. You can also create a reward points summary or statement, which you can allude to maybe a frequent flyer statement that the member may receive on a monthly basis, or maybe you provide it to them on whatever frequency you deem necessary. Just one more way to market to members, and you do have the ability to set an expiration on those, very similar to the Delta miles that I know I have, for example. Those expire after 1 year of non-use. So you do have the ability to expire those if they don't happen to use them, etc. So keep in mind that the reward points or lifetime points can be a bonus that can be configured later on. And maybe the first step of tiered services would be to start thinking about the actual point ranges, descriptions, and configurations, and instant benefits. They can be 2 separate items, and it may not be a bad idea to do it in 2 separate time frames throughout the year, or maybe even separate years to allow you guys to have another opportunity to market to your members. Well, hopefully you guys learned something today in regards to tiered services. Look forward to spending some time with you in some of the other sessions in regards to the month-long learning sessions that we'll be working with. Haven't received any questions through the chat feature. If you have any questions, go ahead and submit those and we can cover them together. Outside of that, thank you guys for attending. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to throw them in the chat, and we'll get those answered for you, and I'll hang out for a little bit here. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, Keegan.
You're welcome. Did just get a question in regards to how the forecasting works. The forecasting is through a separate menu option. Happens to be on our management menu, option number 6 for the forecasting, which we'll dive in a little bit further in one of our further classes that we have later on in the month. But I have the ability to use the score ranges that I have currently, and I can actually specify up to 6 score ranges in here. Even though we only have 4 score ranges within CU Base, I can define 6 here if I wanted to break them up to see which way I wanted to toggle and pull different members based on my level. I can go ahead and hit enter, and it's going to bring me through my configuration screens that we actually just went through, for example. I can change them for the sake of the forecasting only, and it would have no effect on my actual scoring. But it does create a couple different reports for me. I'm just going to go out into my out view here a second to see if I have those reports. Looks like they're not generated yet. It creates a couple of different reports. Number 1 showing how many members and percentages would be in each tier level based on that simulation, as well as how many members would get each level of points based on that information. Doesn't look like my test credit union wants to generate the reports for me, so I'll definitely get the reports for you for one of our future classes. But you guys can also come out here and take a look at your forecasting option without any effect on your existing tiered services program, even if you don't have it currently configured. So definitely get out there and play with it and see what happens because it has no effect on your current program. Great question. Haven't received any other questions, so outside of that, look forward to speaking with you guys. Did just get a question. Do the points accrue every month? The points are calculated on the first of the month during beginning of day processing every single month based on the previous month's activity. You can choose whether or not those points would actually be available for reward points, but we don't actually accrue points. We're more or less scoring them once a month based on the previous month's activity. So there's no accrual that needs to take place or anything along those lines. The only thing that you may want to analyze is whether or not you want to develop or promote reward points within your credit union, because then that monthly points that are scored on the first of the month would be added to a bucket. So if month 1 I got 150 points, month 2 I got 250 points, I would then have a total of 400 reward points that would be available for me. But there's definitely no accrual process involved. Good question. Doesn't look like there's any further questions, so I'll go ahead and close out of the session. Thank you all for attending. Look forward to working with you on some of the next classes. Thanks a lot for your time, guys.
Thank you all for attending. We'll see you next time.